The year was 1741, deep in the reign of the Qianlong Emperor, when a chilling rumor swept through the Forbidden City. It was whispered quietly by eunuchs in shadowed corridors, passed between frightened palace maids, and murmured behind silk sleeves in candle-lit chambers. A favorite concubine had vanished without warning. No illness, no farewell, no explanation, as if the palace had swallowed her whole. To the outside world, the Qing Empire shone with unmatched glory. But behind the crimson walls and golden roofs, the Imperial Harem concealed secrets darker than the night that hung over Beijing. The Imperial Harem was never merely a place of luxury. It was a political battlefield disguised in silk. Behind every wooden screen stood women whose destinies depended on a single man they rarely even saw. Hundreds of concubines lived tightly confined inside this labyrinth of courtyards, unable to leave, unable to be heard beyond the walls. Their only hope for survival was imperial favor. Their greatest fear was being forgotten, and their deadliest enemy was each other. To understand the darkness that consumed the harem, one must first understand its structure. The palace women were arranged in strict ranks, each determined by their beauty, family background, and above all, the emperor's interest. At the very top stood the empress, the official wife. Beneath her were the noble consorts, then lower, ranking concubines, and finally the palace maids who served them. The elevation or downfall of any woman could shift the balance of power in the entire imperial court. A single promotion could elevate a clan to national influence. A single misstep could doom her to isolation or death. The emperor himself rarely knew the sufferings of the women who lived under his reign. The harem was its own world, governed by a hierarchy older than most dynasties. Eunuchs oversaw daily operations. Senior maids controlled food, clothing, and movement. And the emperor's mother, the Empress Dowager, held power over every life inside the inner palace. A smile from her could save a woman. A frown could destroy her. One of the darkest secrets centered around the selection process that brought girls into the Forbidden City. Most people believed concubines were chosen from the most beautiful families of the empire. But the truth was more brutal. Every 3 years, young Manchu girls from noble and military families were gathered in Beijing for the selection ceremony. They were paraded like objects, inspected like livestock. Their bodies were examined for skin flaws, their teeth, their posture, even their walking style. A girl could be chosen just because an advisor thought her face was pleasing. A girl could be rejected simply because her shadow did not fall in a way the officials liked. But being selected was not a blessing. It was often a lifelong sentence. Once a girl entered the harem, she was trapped forever. For most concubines, the emperor would never even speak to them. Some would spend their entire lives without once seeing his face. They would wither into old age behind closed doors, their families forgotten, their identities erased. The palace had a name for these women. They were called abandoned flowers. Inside the walls, jealousy brewed like poison. If one concubine received the emperor's favor, others saw their own lives shrinking. A single night with the Son of Heaven determined promotions, punishments, and the future of entire clans. This tension created an environment where cruelty grew naturally. Food was poisoned, clothing was sabotaged, rumors spread like wildfire. A concubine could be accused of witchcraft simply because another woman envied her hairpins. One of the most terrifying practices involved the power of the senior eunuchs. These men, mutilated at a young age to serve the palace, held enormous authority over the emperor's daily life. They controlled which concubines would be summoned to the emperor. They manipulated schedules, withheld messages, created alliances, and destroyed reputations. Several concubines rose or fell not because of their beauty or manners, but because a eunuch decided their fate in secret. The palace was filled with silent tragedies. Concubines were forbidden from mourning their dead parents. They were forbidden from writing letters. They could be punished for crying too loudly or for wearing a color reserved for a higher, ranked woman. The rules were endless, suffocating, and cruel. Punishments were harsher still. A concubine who offended the emperor could be demoted to the lowest rank, beaten, or imprisoned. In the worst cases, she could be executed quietly, her death recorded as illness. Some stories were so dark that later historians hesitated to repeat them. For example, when a new emperor came to the throne in certain dynasties, he was required to inherit the previous emperor's harem. To prevent political alliances from continuing through older concubines, some emperors ordered their predecessors' concubines to take their own lives as a symbol of loyalty. A single order could force dozens of young women to end their lives on the same day. In the Qing dynasty, the Qianlong emperor was known for maintaining strict discipline inside the harem, but even he could not prevent the tide of cruelty that flowed among the women. Behind the glamorous image of imperial China, the reality was one of confinement, psychological torment, and constant fear. The palace was a world without freedom, where every whisper mattered, where every gesture could be misinterpreted, and where survival depended on luck as much as cunning. By the time the concubine vanished in 1741, the tension inside the Forbidden City had reached a breaking point. The senior eunuchs whispered among themselves, but no one dared speak openly. Some said she had angered a higher-ranked consort. Others claimed she was taken away because she knew a secret too great to be allowed to live. The palace archives recorded nothing. Her name disappeared from the official rolls. It was as if her entire existence had been wiped away. What happened to her was never revealed by the court, but centuries later, historians studying the Qing archives would uncover hints in private letters, eunuch confessions, and unused drafts of memorials. These fragments suggested that the dark truth behind her disappearance was rooted in the oldest, most sinister tradition of the Chinese harem, the battle for influence that could change the fate of the emperor himself. The deeper you step into the story of the imperial harem, the more haunting secrets you uncover, and her disappearance was only the beginning. The disappearance of the concubine in 1741 sent invisible ripples through the Forbidden City, unsettling the carefully crafted silence that governed the inner palace. Although no official announcement was made, the harem understood that something dangerous had happened. In a world where every step waited for permission, and every breath carried risk, the sudden vanishing of a woman, favored only months earlier, spoke volumes. It revealed a deeper truth about the harem, that behind every jeweled hairpin, beneath every layer of silk, lay an ancient machinery of power designed to crush anyone who dared disrupt its balance. The harem did not function like an ordinary royal household. It was a political institution older than the Ming and Qing dynasties, rooted in thousands of years of imperial tradition. Every concubine, whether she came from a prestigious clan or a small rural banner family, was part of a larger system shaped by the ambitions of noble lineages, military elites, and personal networks within the palace. The women were not merely companions to the emperor, they were symbols, bargaining chips, and sometimes weapons. At the heart of this world stood the *** Empress ***, the mother of the nation. Her power was nearly royal in its own right. She supervised daily rituals, verified food for poison, managed ceremonial duties, and held authority over the ranks of the other women. Yet her position was never secure. A single concubine who bore a son could shake the foundation of her authority. If that son grew into a powerful prince, her influence risked being overshadowed or eliminated entirely. Thus, the empress lived with constant tension between maintaining dignity and protecting herself from threats masked behind polite smiles. Below, the empress were the ** imperial noble consorts ***, noble consorts ***, and consorts ***, each rank created to maintain distance between women and prevent alliances from forming too easily. Every movement of these women was regulated. Their access to the emperor was scheduled, their rooms were inspected daily, and their attendants were monitored to prevent gossip or secret communication. Even their jewelry and clothing were assigned by rank, so no woman could accidentally appear more important than another. But while the hierarchy seemed rigid, the true power inside the harem lay not in titles, but in favor. A single night with the emperor could change a woman's destiny. If she pleased him, she could be elevated. If she conceived a son, she became precious, but favor also put a target on her back. The women who felt sidelined would watch jealously from behind screens, whispering to their maids, plotting ways to defend their own survival. One of the darkest realities was the practice known simply as regulating attention. The emperor rarely had time or interest to visit every concubine. Instead, eunuchs, senior maids, and powerful consorts controlled who received invitations to the emperor's private chambers. A eunuch who disliked a concubine could subtly change her clothing, misplace her appointment scroll, or give her cold food that worsened her health, making her unfit for an imperial visit. A consort with influence could whisper accusations of bad manners or suspicious behavior. If these whispers reached the wrong ears, the woman could be punished, demoted, or quietly removed from the emperor's sight. This surveillance created a suffocating atmosphere. Concubines rarely slept peacefully. Dreams of advancement were always shadowed by fear of betrayal. Even friendships were dangerous. Two women seen together too frequently could be accused of forming a political alliance. A concubine who showed kindness to a maid might later discover that maid had been ordered to spy on her. Nothing was private. Everything was recorded in silence. Within this system of manipulation, the eunuchs played the most complex and feared role. They were the emperor's closest servants, the only males allowed inside the inner palace. Their unusual status gave them access to both imperial authority and the intimate lives of the concubines. Some eunuchs were loyal, but others were masters of deception. A eunuch could make or break a concubine's fate by controlling information, sabotaging rivals, or aligning himself with a powerful woman in exchange for influence. The eunuchs operated in networks, forming alliances that sometimes outlived emperors. The most dreaded were the senior supervising eunuchs, who oversaw multiple palaces and answered directly to the Empress Dowager or the emperor himself. These men had been in the palace since childhood, trained in obedience, but also in political survival. They understood the weak points of every concubine. They knew who was lonely, who was jealous, who was desperate, and desperation was the most valuable currency in the harem. It was desperation that fueled the darkest practices. Poisoning was always a risk, but it was rarely done through food. Food was inspected too carefully. Instead, a concubine might find her bathwater mixed with harmful substances that slowly weakened her. Or her cosmetics might be tampered with, causing rashes that ruined her appearance, diminishing her chance to be summoned by the emperor. Sometimes, a concubine's personal maid was bribed to sabotage her undergarments or bedding to make her appear unclean or ill. These were the invisible weapons of the harem. They left no obvious scars, no marks on the body, but they destroyed reputations, health, and fertility. A concubine who fell ill too often was considered unlucky. One who aged prematurely lost her beauty, and a woman who could not produce children lost her purpose entirely. For this reason, pregnancy was the most guarded and most dangerous period of a concubine's life. A woman who conceived an imperial child became a potential mother of a prince, and possibly a future emperor. Her pregnancy was monitored day and night. Guards were placed outside her doors. Food was double-checked. But protection often came too late. Many concubines miscarried under suspicious circumstances. Some fell downstairs. Some collapsed suddenly during routine ceremonies. A few disappeared quietly after the loss of their child. Historians suggest that some miscarriages were not accidents but carefully orchestrated attacks by rival consorts or ambitious eunuchs. A concubine carrying a prince threatened the political balance. Removing her meant protecting the position of another woman or another clan. These matters were never discussed publicly. The official records simply noted illness or tragedy. The concubine who vanished in 1741 was known to be young, educated, and gentle. She had entered the palace only 2 years earlier and had drawn the emperor's attention with her refinement during court rituals. This quiet rise unsettled several higher-ranked consorts who feared her growing influence. The night before her disappearance, she had been seen receiving a small red, lacquered box from a palace maid. No one knew who sent it. No one saw what was inside. By dawn, she was gone. The emperor did not search for her. The harem understood his silence. He knew the palace could not function if every whisper of violence turned into investigation. It was easier to let her vanish than to expose the machinery that maintained the stability of the inner court. In the politics of the Forbidden City, truth was often more dangerous than the crime. But her disappearance awakened something deeper. It revealed how fragile every concubine's life truly was. Favor, beauty, talent, lineage, none of it mattered in the face of invisible enemies. The palace was a living organism that fed on its own secrets, and those who survived did so by becoming part of the system, not by resisting it. The concubine's fate would remain hidden for years, buried beneath layers of silence. But her story was not over. The clues left in court letters and eunuch testimonies suggest that her downfall was connected to a powerful struggle unfolding behind the walls, a struggle involving the Empress Dowager herself, and it was about to shake the entire imperial harem. As the chilling winter of 1741 settled over the Forbidden City, the disappearance of the young concubine continued to haunt the harem. Snow coated the palace roofs like pale silk, muffling footsteps and turning the courtyards quiet, but beneath that stillness something stirred. It was not grief, it was calculation. Every woman who walked the red stone pathways felt the shift in power, as if the palace itself had inhaled sharply and held its breath. At the heart of this tense silence was the Empress Dowager, Chongqing mother of the Qianlong Emperor, an undisputed ruler of the inner court. Her authority was unmatched. Even the empress, who nominally led the harem, bowed before her. The older women of the palace whispered that nothing happened without the dowager knowing. She heard the softest rumor through her network of loyal eunuchs and maids. She knew who met whom, who cried behind their curtains at night, who received gifts, and who plotted revenge. To survive the Forbidden City, one needed allies, but to dominate it, one needed fear, and the Empress Dowager had mastered both. Historians who later examined palace memorials discovered that the Dowager had been particularly sensitive during this period. Her son, the Emperor, had recently displayed affection towards several young concubines, rather than spending time with the higher-ranked consorts chosen by tradition and politics. This shift unsettled the balance she had built so carefully. For the Dowager, the harem was not a place of romance. It was an institution with political consequences stretching across the empire. The Dowager understood better than anyone that a concubine who bore a prince could eventually shape the future of the Qing dynasty. The mother of an emperor became one of the most powerful women in China. Families of favored concubines received promotions, wealth, military influence, and regional authority. A single childbirth inside the palace could change the fate of entire clans. So when the vanished concubine began rising in favor, the dowager's unease grew. She did not hate the girl. She did not even know her well, but she understood the dangers of sudden favor. A young concubine without political ties was unpredictable. She might become loyal only to the emperor, bypassing the dowager's influence. And if she bore a child, her clan would gain power. The dowager needed control, not uncertainty. The vanished concubine was only one thread in a wider tapestry of struggle unfolding behind closed screens. While the emperor oversaw reforms, infrastructure, and cultural projects in the outer court, the inner palace was turning into a silent battlefield. 3 powerful women were vying for dominance, each with her own motives, allies, and vision for the future. The first was the Empress Dowager, a woman of noble birth and strong morals. She was respected by the emperor for her intelligence and known throughout the palace for her kindness. But kindness had no place in the harem's harsher corners, and she quietly suffered from the constant pressure to maintain order. Although she tried to protect the concubines under her authority, her limited support base made her vulnerable to manipulation. The second was consort Zhen a woman of lower rank but extraordinary strategic insight. She had risen quickly through the harem not because of beauty alone, but because she understood how the palace breathed. She knew how to spread subtle influence and how to form alliances with eunuchs who controlled access to information. She was feared more than she was loved, and she knew it. The third was the Empress Dowager, whose very presence commanded obedience. She did not speak loudly. She did not need to. Her authority rested on decades of palace experience, mastery of ritual, and the loyalty of eunuchs who owed her their positions. The vanished concubine's rise had threatened each of these women differently. To the Empress, she symbolized another challenger to her already fragile position. To Consort Zhen, she was a rival who might take control of certain branches of palace administration. To the Dowager, she was a risk to the power structure she had built. The Forbidden City had no open confrontations. There were no public arguments, no formal accusations. The war was fought through glances, gestures, sealed messages, and quiet orders delivered at night. Every woman who lived there understood that silence hid the deadliest intentions. In one sealed court letter discovered centuries later, a eunuch who served under the Dowager described the atmosphere in the weeks leading up to the concubine's disappearance. He wrote of mysterious meetings held late at night, of maids who were reassigned without explanation, of gifts exchanged between senior consorts and eunuchs who controlled the emperor's schedule. Although he never named the concubine directly, his words painted a vivid picture of tension and hidden alliances. One of the most sinister traditions inside the palace was the secret interrogation chamber operated by the inner court. Only the Empress Dowager and two of the high-ranking eunuchs had the authority to summon a woman there. It was said that questions asked in that chamber were never recorded, and those who entered might not return. Rumors suggested that the vanished concubine had been taken to this chamber shortly before her disappearance, though no official record confirms this. While the Dowager may not have personally ordered her disappearance, she certainly permitted the environment that allowed it. For her, preserving stability inside the inner court was more important than the fate of one girl. But the disappearance had consequences no one expected. The emperor noticed the shift in the harem's atmosphere. He sensed the tension in the way eunuch Gao approached him with stiff shoulders. He felt the unease in the way the empress avoided eye contact. He observed the sudden silence in morning greetings from the concubines. Although he did not ask openly about the vanished woman, he sensed something was hidden from him. This growing suspicion became the spark that exposed deeper fractures. The emperor began asking subtle questions about the schedules of his concubines, the movements of his mother's personal eunuchs, and unusual changes in palace routines. The Dowager interpreted his curiosity as distrust. Distrust inside the imperial family was a dangerous seed, one that could grow into rebellion, division, or loss of imperial dignity. To counter this, the Dowager began gathering more information on the harem's internal rivalries. She learned that Consort Zhen had quietly expanded her influence among the palace maids. She discovered that the empress had privately complained about the rising number of unexplained conflicts inside the palace. She uncovered hidden alliances that threatened her control over ritual, ceremony, and palace administration. The Dowager also learned something far more alarming. A concubine of mid-rank, previously considered harmless, had been secretly meeting with a eunuch connected to a powerful noble family outside the palace. Their correspondence suggested ambitions of raising her son, a young prince, into a position stronger than the dowager approved. This discovery revealed that the harem was not simply a place of jealousy and romance. It was a political arena tied to the empire's future. The vanished concubines case was only the surface of a deeper war being waged beneath layers of silence. As tensions rose, palace punishments increased. Maids were transferred suddenly, eunuchs disappeared, rooms were sealed and reopened days later. The emperor's visits became unpredictable, showing that he no longer trusted his mother's scheduling system. The dowager interpreted this shift as a weakening of her authority, prompting her to act more aggressively. This silent war built toward a dramatic confrontation that would expose the darkest secret of the harem, a secret involving betrayal, a hidden heir, and a plot that threatened the throne itself. And it all began with the disappearance of one young woman who had unknowingly stepped into the center of a storm. By early 1742, the invisible war within the Forbidden City approached a breaking point. The harem had become a vast web of alliances, suspicions, and secret agendas, more dangerous than ever before. Every courtyard carried whispers. Every shadow felt alive. Every concubine walked as if the ground beneath her feet might vanish. The emperor sensed it, the Empress Dowager knew it, and the eunuchs, who moved like ghosts between palaces, felt the tension thickening like winter fog. The vanished concubine story, long buried under silence, resurfaced unexpectedly when a mid-ranking palace maid attempted to flee the northern gate one cold evening. Palace guards caught her before she could disappear into the snowy night. She was trembling, terrified, and refused to speak until she was brought before the empress herself. What she revealed would shake the foundations of the harem. The maid claimed to have served the vanished concubine during her final weeks. She testified that before her disappearance, the concubine had been secretly visited by a senior eunuch who delivered messages from an unknown source. Soon after these visits, the concubine began receiving small boxes containing rare medicinal herbs, delicate silk garments, and handwritten notes that she kept hidden. The notes supposedly warned her not to trust certain higher-ranked consorts. Even more shocking, the maid insisted that the concubine had been experiencing early signs of pregnancy. This revelation struck like lightning. A pregnancy was not just a private matter. It was a political event of enormous consequence. A concubine carrying an imperial child became a powerful figure overnight, and the harem's strict hierarchy was built to protect or destroy such women, depending on who benefited. If the vanished concubine had truly been pregnant, her disappearance was no coincidence. It was part of a plan. The Empress Dowager immediately ordered a secret inquiry. She questioned eunuchs, maids, and palace guards quietly, without letting the emperor know. The dowager was skilled at reading shadows. She assembled fragments of testimonies, ignored contradictions, and focused on patterns. Her investigation pointed toward one disturbing conclusion. There had been a hidden alliance inside the palace. The threads led back to consort Gen ***, the ambitious woman who understood the palace better than anyone else. She had cultivated influence for years, weaving relationships with eunuchs and maids who owed her favors. She knew how to read the emperor's moods, how to predict the dowager's strategies, and how to survive attacks that crushed other concubines. But even she had not avoided suspicion. The dowager discovered that a eunuch close to consort Gen had been meeting with a noble clan outside the palace. This clan was known to have ambitions of raising their political standing in the king court. The dowager concluded that if the vanished concubine carried a prince, she may have unknowingly become a pawn in a larger plot. A plot that threatened the carefully balanced structure of imperial succession. But the dowager was not the only one investigating. The emperor had launched his own quiet inquiry. Frustrated by the suffocating silence of the harem, he began interrogating palace officials about strange movements around the women's quarters. His questions became bolder. His tone grew sharper. The eunuchs realized he knew more than he should. His mother realized he trusted her less than before. For the first time in years, power in the Forbidden City shifted unpredictably. It was during this fragile period that a hidden chamber beneath the Palace of Benevolent Tranquility was uncovered. Workers repairing the southern foundation discovered an unused storage room blocked by an old wooden barrier. Inside, they found discarded scrolls, damaged lacquer boxes, and fragments of silk bearing the emblem used by mid-ranking concubines. Among the items was a small red, lacquered case identical to the one the vanished concubine had received before her disappearance. The case contained a single thin strip of silk. On it were handwritten characters, faded yet still readable. The message was short. The life inside you is in danger. Trust only the one who brings this. It was proof. Someone had warned her. Someone knew she was pregnant. Someone tried to protect her, but someone else acted first. The discovery intensified suspicion throughout the palace. Consort Zhen was called for questioning. The Empress Dowager asked her directly whether she had been involved in the disappearance. Consort Zhen denied everything calmly. Her voice remained steady, her expression controlled. She claimed she had never met the vanished concubine outside of rituals. She insisted she had no reason to harm her, but there was fear in her eyes. And the Dowager saw it. Still, the Dowager hesitated to punish her. Consort Zhen was intelligent, influential, and connected to powerful clans. Any misstep could cause political backlash in the outer court. Punishing her openly risked appearing unjust or impulsive. The emperor, however, saw hesitation as weakness. Frustrated by his mother's slow methods, he confronted her privately. Their conversation was recorded in the memoirs of a court historian decades later. The emperor accused his mother of hiding truths from him. The Dowager accused him of acting without understanding the complexity of palace politics. Their argument revealed a growing divide between them. The emperor demanded transparency. The Dowager demanded obedience. The tension between mother and son became the final spark that exposed the hidden truth. A eunuch loyal to the Dowager, fearing the collapse of palace authority, came forward secretly with new information. He confessed that the vanished concubine had been taken to a remote outer palace under the orders of a powerful consort. He claimed that a group of eunuchs, pressured by the unknown noble clan, had removed her before her pregnancy became public. He insisted they intended to keep her hidden until her child was born, after which the child could be used to challenge the Dowager's influence. But something went wrong. The eunuchs involved panicked. They feared discovery, and according to the confession, the concubine never made it to the safe house. Her fate had been sealed before she left the Forbidden City. The emperor was furious. He demanded the names of every eunuch involved. He ordered immediate searches of the palace rooms connected to the accused. Consort Zhen's closest attendants were arrested. Several eunuchs disappeared overnight to avoid punishment. Some were found days later, hiding inside storerooms or praying in abandoned shrines. In the chaos, one truth became clear. The vanished concubine had indeed carried a child. The child may have been a prince, and her disappearance was part of a desperate struggle among clans to control the future of the Qing dynasty. The emperor mourned privately. He blamed the Dowager, he blamed the harem, he blamed the invisible machinery of power that consumed innocent lives. But he also understood that the palace had always functioned this way. The system was older than he was, older than his father, older than the dynasty itself. In the end, he chose preservation over justice. Consort Zhen was quietly removed from her rank and confined to a remote palace. The eunuchs involved were executed or banished. The Dowager resumed authority over the harem, but her influence over her son diminished forever. The emperor introduced stricter regulations to prevent private correspondence, unapproved alliances, and secret gatherings within the women's quarters. The harem would continue to exist, but its darkest mechanisms became more hidden, its secrets more carefully buried. The vanished concubine's name was never restored. Her story remained a whisper for centuries. But her fate revealed something vital about the Chinese Imperial Harem. It was not merely a place of beauty or romance. It was a political fortress built on fear, ambition, and survival. Every concubine lived under the shadow of unpredictable danger. Every eunuch navigated shifting loyalties. Every empress fought battles behind closed doors. And behind the gold and jade of the Forbidden City, the lives of women remained entangled in a system designed to silence them. The Chinese Imperial Harem shaped the rise and fall of families, influenced imperial succession, and determined the course of dynasties. Its secrets were not just personal tragedies. They were chapters of world history. The story of the vanished concubine reminds us that the shining palaces we see today were built on invisible sacrifices, whispered conspiracies, and the silent suffering of countless women whose names history refused to record.